Come, come, come out tonight. Come, come, come out to play. Come, come, come out tonight. Alice, come out and play.
Alice was still wearing the crown when she became aware of a scuffle at the door. One of the bouncers was in some sort of altercation there. As she neared to see and hear what was going on, the following event played out. "Mister, I have the money to buy your food. Please let me in like any other person," said a dishevelled and somewhat unkempt-looking woman wearing a heavy winter overcoat, though the day was hot and even a bit sticky from the dense humidity that permeated the now stuffy air. From her shoulder hung a bag with what appeared to be an assortment of equally dirty and soiled stuffed animals. "I have some money, mister, see? Please, have a heart, sir." Holding out a handful of change in her palm so the bouncer would see she wasn't lying, the woman hoped against all hope that he'd find it in his heart to let her in. Alice was now next to the two of them. Next, the bouncer muttered a curse beneath his breath and heartlessly smacked all the coins from the outstretched hand. The money went spilling inside the door and all across the MHB&R floor. Grabbing her roughly by the shoulders, he pushed her out the door and in the direction of the street. "Jude!" she screeched at the top of her lungs. "Stop it! Just stop it! I know her. She's a friend of mine," Alice lied. "Get away from her. I'll take care of this." Whether it was the tone and strength of her voice or the enraged and berserk burning look of her eyes, the bouncer wordlessly retreated and left them alone. The woman, who appeared to be homeless and more than a little down on her luck, had already begun to walk away. "Ma'am, please wait. I want to help you." Slowly, with caution and trepidation, the woman turned to ask, "You want to help me, dear?" and then moved back, but not into the door which she dared not walk through again. "I have to help. Maybe it's the last thing I'll ever truly and fully understand. You see, I do now know if you possess the ability to help someone in need, then just pretend they're not there and do nothing. You've committed a sin far worse than all the sins detailed in the Bible's 10 Commandments. I know it's not explained exactly that way anywhere in the good book, and I haven't read all of it, but enough of it to know it's a message they're trying to tell us on every page. Be kind to one another. Do good, always. 8 words, 8 little words, and if we only all live by those words, then what a wonderful world this could be. Wait a minute, ma'am, please, just wait a minute. I have to help." Going down on her hands and knees before the stranger, and with head hung so humbly low that one would have thought the crown Alice wore could have slipped and fallen off, she crawled about collecting the coins. When the last was gathered, she stood before the waiting woman, counting them to be sure all had been recovered. In total they numbered 13. Funny, when Alice had first begun gathering, she was sure they were nickels, dimes or quarters. Now tallying them up, there seemed to be, oh my, they appeared to be 13 pieces of silver. "I found 13, ma'am. If there are more to find, please tell me and I'll search again." Even though the destitute woman's lips looked cracked and sore, and there were many teeth missing, when she smiled in confirmation of the number, it was the most beatific smile Alice had ever had the privilege to accept. "Yes, Alice, 13, right on the nose. Those pieces of silver, as well as another incident from eons past that weighs upon my heart and soul, were mine to bear for as long as I can remember, and I'll probably continue carrying them through eternity. I once did something that I'm not proud of to someone who loved me with all their heart and soul. In a way, they're like my cross to bear. I'll be on my way now, dear." "Wait, please wait," she beseeched the woman who had yet not turned away. Lifting the crown away and up from her noodle, Alice placed it upon the other woman's head and said, "I must give you this. I want you to have it, ma'am." "What, you want me to have what may be one of your most prized possessions? You're willing to share and give your crown to a pauper, Alice?" Placing a hand over her heart prior to saying another word, she knew that although well-intentioned, the words which the pauper had just spoken could no longer be held as true, or at least they were no longer Alice's truth. "No, it's not what I value most any more, Ma'am." "Then you do indeed have a very kind and noble spirit, girl, and I bless you," she said while walking away from the Hatter, crowned in all her glory. As Alice watched her depart, her hand was still above her heart, and with a start she realised it was no longer beating. What was that? The entire building in which the Mad Hatter Bar and Restaurant was a part of now shook with a tremor and a rumble for several seconds before stopping. Was it an earthquake? Alice wasn't sure if Hobohemia had ever been hit by one before. She knew for certain during the time she'd made the trip on her electric scooter between Brooklyn and the restaurant, she could not recall ever hearing of this sort of occurrence in the past. To be absolutely honest, since her head had been hurting for whatever reason, it was increasingly difficult to sift through thoughts as well as clearly recall past memories, like what had happened prior to the last nearly 24 hours, or where she'd parked the Segway and left her protective headgear helmet. How had she come by that nasty bump on her forehead that ceaselessly throbbed and perhaps bled a bit? Once more the entire building vibrated as it was struck by these odd, sudden shock waves from somewhere unknown. What was odder, no one else within the walls of the MHR&B took notice of the occurrence. Only Alice. Even more peculiar was nothing had fallen from any shelves. The beer mugs hanging from hooks that held them suspended above the bartender's side of the bar neither swayed nor moved. The seismic phenomena that Alice had first noted occurring at 1:07 p.m, at least according to the time-warped Hatter timepiece, showed no sign of relenting. Again and again it felt as if the building was rocking and shaking and rattling and rolling uncontrollably. Meanwhile, for most, life within those walls went on in a much blinded bliss of ignorance. No one around her seemed to be aware, much less than show any sign of concern or panic. "Sto ne uredu sovim ludima, svi ili spaveju ili im mozak naradi," Alice thought to herself. Oh, and which was Croatian, of course, for "What's wrong with these people? They all must be asleep or brain dead." Each wave of the increasingly violent tremors shook her to the bone and rattled her brain. It was even becoming difficult to maintain balance as they continued ceaselessly. As a precaution, she reached back and latched onto the edge of the bar behind her, worrying her legs would go weak and buckle. "Doesn't anyone else feel that?" Alice now screamed at them. "What's wrong with you people? Why are you all just sitting there doing nothing like a bunch of zombies?" Nary one had raised their head to acknowledge her cry. Nay, none had halted conversations nor pulled cell phones out to call for help or to say a final farewell to loved ones they'd never see again. All were oblivious to what was happening. What was wrong with them? What was wrong with all of them? What in all of God's great glory, as she watched over them, was the hell wrong with everyone? Then, like a sun rising on a brand new day, it dawned on Alice. No one had heard her. She screamed louder and louder and louder, but to no avail. They all just went on drinking and talking, going about their business, as if she wasn't even in the same world or dimension, much less than the same bar as them. She must somehow, some way, and not later but now, get them to hear her. It was a monumental matter of life and death after all. Spotting Frottage Frank in a corner, leaning in far too much while he spoke to one of the other waitresses, she made her way while teetering on unsteady legs toward him and hollered, "Frank! Frank, don't you feel it? That shaking, those tremors, the quaking and all the shuddering, don't you feel anything at all?" But Frank, now with his hand on the cornered waitress's curvaceous hip, displayed not a sign he'd felt anything unusual or had heard her shouting at him. He just went on talking while the trapped woman with him attempted to squirm away and out of the touchy-feely creep's reach. Alice, from the corner of her eye, saw the Jabberwocky had emerged from the laird he employed as his office and was walking the length of the bar room, calmly and without a care. Running to him, she implored, "We have to get these people out of here before the whole building collapses, and we have to do it right this moment. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. It's getting so much worse now." Although for a moment a concerned look had spread across the Jabberwocky's beard-stubbled face, he immediately stuck a stubby finger in the air in a gesture of fiat lux, as if he'd remembered something, and then walked back in the direction of the office he'd departed, as though not seeing her. Thinking that this was a joke that everyone was in on but her, from all the employees to a few of the regulars, she now sought the assistance of strangers. Table by table, person by person, the weary and worried woman, without success, did all within her weakening powers to make them hear, see, acknowledge and confirm her existence in some fashion. But not a single soul appeared to have heard, seen, acknowledged, or could confirm that Alice was even alive. The trembling and the shaking were so severe she now decided if they didn't want to be saved from certain death, then she had no other choice than to save herself. In a state of complete, abject, hopeless horror, Alice did her best to cross the length of the uneven bar-room floor to make it out and through the door. Her feet felt leaden and becoming even heavier with every step she took in that direction. "You're all going to die if you don't get out right now," she shrieked as she ran. "Get out! Get out! Get out! Before the building collapses on you and you're buried in a grave of rubble! Get your sorry asses out before it's too late!" Since no one would listen to her, what other choice had she but to leave them all behind? As if in a dream, Alice moved in slow motion that decreased in velocity the nearer she came to her desired destination of making it through the door. Had gravity been turned up one increment above 10, its uppermost level, and was now set at 11, looking above to the ceiling, and for some inexplicable reason, it appeared to be the undercarriage of a motor vehicle. Hopefully the nauseating dizziness she felt at the pit of her stomach couldn't get much worse than it was. But it did, and simply would not diminish. The whole room spun about like one of those stupid carnival rides, the kind that by the time it stopped you were ready to puke your guts out, along with all the cotton candy, popcorn, sickly sweet drinks, corn dogs, and any other crappy carnival cuisine consumed while visiting an amusement park. And there was nothing to think of that was amusing about what was now happening to Alice. Her skin had grown cold and clammy, as red-hot bolts of fire shot through her tired body in flashes. Her legs turned into rubber, the spine she needed for support melting like a popsicle left out in the sun, and legs buckling beneath her. With a sigh of recognition and resignation of what was happening, the floor suddenly rushed upwards to meet her downward falling face. She had landed upon it head first, collapsing, unconscious, and still inside the Mad Hatter Bar and Restaurant, a mere 8 feet away from the door through which Alice had sought salvation.
Come, come, come out tonight. Come, come, come out to play. Come, come, come out tonight. Alice, come out and play.